Okay. So I am live with Daria Grabchuk. Am I saying that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So Daria, what is your story? So just to preface this, from what I know about you, you're a Rockstar member.
That's correct.
You work with Paul DeBruzzo on the team.
Yes.
You are an immigration consultant
Yes.
/ attorney.
Immigration consultant.
Okay, and this is like a private business that you run.
Yeah, it's a private business. So basically in Canada, there are two types of businesses who can provide immigration help to people who look to immigrate to Canada or get citizenship. So number one would be lawyers, and number two would be immigration consultants who have active license and good standing order.
So that would be you?
Yes, that's me.
Okay, so this is like a certification that you take.
Yes, you have to go through the special education, pass your CMP fingerprints, pass the entry to practice exam, and then just every year you have to continue learning. You have some CPD credits, meaning then you continuously learning new information, because as we speak right now, there are going to be announcement by the Minister of Immigration, Sean Fraser, about some new visa-free travel programs. So it's constantly new programs coming in, and I have to stay up to date.
Okay, so it's a private business where you're helping people internationally come into Canada.
In Canada as well. So in Canada, internationally. So whoever is interested in any immigration, Canadian-related immigration, I'm here to help.
So Canadians also leaving Canada to immigrate to other places? Or primarily?
Yes, leaving, but there is not much help leaving, right? So if people want to leave Canada, there's not much I can help, right? It's mainly to come to Canada to study, work permits, visitor visas, sponsorship programs, permanent residency. I don't do refugee. It's different. There are so many programs. I believe there are over 70 immigration programs where you can get permanent residency. It's just I'm not able to do all of them. So my specialty is on express entry, economic class, some sponsorship programs, work permits, study permits. So
70 different programs.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a mix of private people like yourself, private businesses helping, and then also public
programs. So it's not like 70. There are, if I'm correct, there is over 100,000 immigration consultants. Not all of them active, not all of them are in good standing order. Some of them have troubles with the law, right? Where they go to the court, immigration
because they're doing illegal things?
Yes.
Oh.
Or some of them simply don't do what they intended to do by getting their license. For example, some consultants, they get their license, but then they're not able to get clients, or they're not sure how to structure their business. So they go work for another company, for another consultant, or let's say lawyer.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack. The reason that we wanted to have you on is because Canada is being flooded with immigration.
Yes.
It's propping up the housing market. It's really just a massive thing that we've been looking at for like the last decade here at Rockstar. It seems like it's finally getting its heyday in the mainstream media for the impact that it's having. And we're trying to understand it more. So I was born and raised in Brampton. So as someone that was born in Canada, I have no idea how the immigration system works. I'm pretty naive to it. And I think most native-born Canadians are. I say native-born, like just born and raised in Canada. That being said, most of us are immigrants if you trace it back far enough. Like my dad was born in Italy, came here in the 1950s. My mom's side, Irish, came in the 1850s with the potato famine and stuff. So, and also, I know that this podcast might get a little bit political in the comments because everyone has their opinions and stuff.
Yes.
But what I'm just trying to understand is how it works. What are the facts? How many people are coming in? How does it all work? So let's dive into that right away. Where are you from, Daria? Because you have an accent.
I'm from Ukraine.
Okay, and when did you come here?
First time I came 2008. I came with my mother and my sister. So we had to come within a certain period of time to get landed immigrant. I came for 2-3 weeks and I left because I went back to Ukraine to finish my bachelor in architecture. So then in 6 months or so, in summer of 2009, I came back to get some extra jobs, let's say, for summer holidays, because I finished 4th year. So I had a couple months in summer to work. And this is when I found my husband. And I stayed here since then, since 2009.
Your husband's Canadian?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why you kind of chose Canada?
Yes.
Okay, so now you're a citizen?
Yes, that's correct.
So you've been through the entire immigration process yourself?
Yes, that's correct. And over the years, it worked this way that I was helping other friends, family members with some immigration inquiries. And in about 2015, I understood that maybe I should go for license, get the license done, and help to people all over the world and in Canada to fix their immigration problems or help them immigrate or any other.
So the consulting business here exists because people are trying to understand how to get in. And because there's so many programs and it's so convoluted?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, it's for some people who want to come to Canada. See, it depends. So there are people who do their homework, they prepare, they know what's required. Some people don't, but they want to come to Canada. So basically, I have two types of clients for people who need hold-handing scenario, where I tell them what to do. You have to do this, that, pass your English exam, find an employer, or how you get, how you study in school, right? In Canada, in school or in college, university. And some people, they know what to do, but they just need a little bit extra help by, for example, me checking their application, ensuring they have all the information they needed. But mainly about 80% of people, they need information step by step. So this is where I come in and I help them, because there is so many programs. It depends on the age, on your education, on your primary NOC code, so National Occupation Code, also property prices, right? So people need to choose their province carefully. For them, in order to, after, for example, if they come for student visa or they come on work permit, so they'll be able to immigrate. Because, for example, for students, it's quite expensive. Like 1 year for international students, about 15,000 a year and up.
For tuition?
Yes. For example,
which is roughly how much?
Three times more in compared to domestic students.
On average, it's about 3 times more?
Yes. So, of course, you need to make sure that the province you're going to and the program you're studying, for example, will give you an ability to apply for permanent residency through this student program, right? So, for example, you're a recent graduate, what types of programs you took, what length, right, of the program. Is it 2-3 year program? Did you study IT or health, right? For example, in British Columbia and here in Ontario too, there are programs that kind of benefit you depending on what you decided to study. So it's kind of long-term planning. So just to come to Canada, yes, get visa, but what's your final decision, right? What you want to get in final? Because mostly about 90% of people, they want to come to Canada, stay here permanently, get their permanent residency status, build a family, buy the house. Some people, what I see right now, for example, from Europe, we have working holiday international experience class programs where citizens of certain countries from 18 to 30 or 35 years old, they can come to Canada much easier than citizens of other countries, and they get work permit for 1 year. So for these type of people, it's more for them, I want to come to Canada and see, right? So they may not necessarily know that decision, or yes, I want to get permanent residency. So it's kind of, you have to talk to the client and see what's your final, where do you see yourself in a couple of years? So this, and based on that, we choose the program, of course, depend on their English, French, jobs, education.
So you mentioned 90% of people want to come here for permanent residency. What about the 10%? Is that just students coming here?
Mainly
or temporary work visas?
Our parents who already decided for them, right, to come to Canada to study, because there is so much capital you need in order for the student to finish, like say 2-3 year diploma. I would say it's about $50,000 if it's a 2-year diploma. The reason for 2-year diploma is after studying and completing 2-year diploma, you can get work permit for 3 years. For example, if you go for a 1-year program, you can only stay and work in Canada 1 year. And 1 year is not enough to get your permanent residency status, because usually you require 1 year full-time job experience. Full-time, but it's 30 hours a week for immigration purposes. So as soon as you finish your college, right away in day 2, you have to start working. Meanwhile, you already have to have your post-graduation work permit applied for and submitted. And then you just don't have much time if you choose 1 year.
Okay, wait. So for 1 year school programs, you can't get in afterwards?
1 year. So basically 1 year, let's say college diploma, will allow you to apply for postgraduate work permit for 1 year.
And then after that year, you could potentially get in?
Potentially, but the chances are much lower if, for example, you go to 2-year diploma, where after completing 2 years diploma, you get 3 years open work permit for students.
Okay.
So this way you have 1 year of work, because the problem with students is students can work 20 to 40 hours depending on the program. It's an on-campus or outside campus. But while you study full-time, your job experience, your work doesn't count towards immigration.
Okay, so why don't we just take it back? Like, how does the Canadian immigration system overall work? It's a points-based system?
Yes, so the biggest one we have right now is an economic program. It's express entry, so it's a computer-based system, which, for example, takes your information into account, how old you are. So up until 30 years old, you get the most points. If you have master's, bachelor, you get the most points. If you have 3 years or more experience, you get the most points. If you have Canadian experience, which is 1 year, also you get more points. And basically, as it works right now is express entry. So Canadian immigration will invite candidates who has the most points. But a couple weeks ago...
So does it just work like top down? Like this guy has 10,000 points.
It's 1,200 max, but lately you can get 1,200 if you get, for example, provincial nomination, which is 600 points. And usually without provincial nomination, you should be in around 500 points.
So it just works top down. Whoever has the most points, you come in, then they go down to the next tier of points. You come in,
So basically you have, there are about 250,000 applicants there who have submitted their profile, and they're waiting for invitation. But the points are very different, right? From 100 to 500 points.
Okay.
But what I'll forget this one. So a couple weeks ago, Sean Fraser, the Minister of Immigration, stated that the system, which is economical system, which is about 50% or more, I have data, but we can check later, invites the candidates with the highest points. But now we're going to be changing. In this year, we're going to see that Immigration of Canada will be inviting candidates with a specific experience. For example, it's going to be IT, it's going to be healthcare, which is great. It's going to be trades, it's going to be agriculture and transport.
So these are all the
prioritized
sectors that we're lacking in naturally here?
So which is good news because, for example, if we take a truck driver, a person who works hard, his points not going to be in the 500s. Maybe he's going to be 300 points, right? So he works hard, they pay taxes, right? But their chances to immigrate, it's not enough, right? To immigrate, get invited through the express entry. So now they're going to prioritize these candidates with a specific NOC codes, which is National Occupation Code, based on their experience. And almost all the economical programs, they require people to have English level.
Okay. So it's a points-based economical system.
Yes.
And how does that compare to maybe the US or the UK or Australia? Just very briefly, high level.
I'm so sorry, I don't have that information.
No, okay, no problem. Because I know, isn't the US a lottery system?
Yeah, so it's basically you register, you show your interest that you want to have a green card.
And it's a random lottery.
It's a lottery. We did have a lottery in Canadian immigration when, for example, permanent residents or Canadian citizens of Canada want to sponsor their parents or grandparents. Then you register, you express your desire to sponsor your relatives, and then they would pick a lottery, right? So you would get picked or not picked.
We no longer have that?
So in 2020, there were selections, and they're still using the pool of the candidates until...
I can see why you need a consultant. I'm already so in the weeds with this.
There is a lot of information. But we can go step by step.
Okay, so generally, is it just the federal government that dictates immigration laws and limits?
So there is, let's say, Bible of immigration is the Act of Immigration, and there is regulations. Federal government would say, for example, we have a quota for 2023. If to be precise, the minimum would be 485 permanent residents accepted, and the maximum would be 542. So there is a 50,000.
What are the odds that we're going to stay within that number?
Yeah, we're going to stay.
We will.
We will be somewhere there.
Isn't it like a thing where we keep overshooting it?
So they give themselves extra room. So they say, for example, minimum is 482. So for last year, I think we got 437,000. So we don't have enough. We don't have enough candidates that can qualify based on some programs where the points are taken into account. So the federal government says how many immigrants will accept, and then each province also has the right, so they have the quota to give a nomination of that 600 points I mentioned before to give this specific person with the experience, education they have, or some, let's say, trades who need certification, so they can go through the next level. So it's both. It's federal and provincial. Each province has their own, let's say, in-demand program, right? So the codes, no codes, which are the jobs which are required in that specific area. For example, here in Ontario, there are in-demand occupations. They are very specific no codes, but depending on the area you're working, some codes may not qualify. So usually Toronto GTA is very limited. if you go, let's say, Cambridge, Kitchener, Hamilton, you have more options, which is great. And you lose points in some instances.
Wait, so specific municipalities
Yes.
within the provinces are then looking for different types of jobs?
Yes. For example, here we have rural north immigration programs all over Canada. So it would be up north where they have their own program and they can attract people to stay there.
Okay, so let's say a logger, I don't know, this is probably off. A logger wants to come in from India and he has experience logging in India, and maybe with the traditional point system, it wouldn't have ranked high, but now we're incentivizing loggers because we need loggers in rural Northern Ontario. So then he comes in and maybe speaks to someone like you, and you let him know, hey, there's these townships in Northern Ontario
Yes.
that you have a higher chance of getting into.
Or you're just going to be eligible. Most of the time, what happens is your experience is not in the NOC code that is required for that specific area, region, or province. So basically, what happens to majority of people who want to immigrate, for example, they come to Canada, they finish school or college, and then they just go to the regular jobs, let's say sales associate, right, or work in a warehouse. These NOCs will not let you go through the federal program, economical program, which is Express Entry I just mentioned. You have to look through certain provincial municipalities, areas who will accept this experience to count towards immigration and let you be eligible to take part.
Okay, so without these specific municipalities programs, you might not be eligible.
Exactly. If there is no, for example, you don't want to move out of Toronto, but your experience doesn't count to federal immigration, you cannot even register with this experience to show that, yes, I want to be permanent resident, or even, let's say, in GTA or like Ontario, this NOC is not there for you to participate.
Okay, so, all right. So what are the main pathways into Canada in terms of immigration?
The biggest one is economical. Then we have
the point system.
Yes. Then we have family sponsorship. We have some numbers allocated to refugees and protected person. Then we have humanitarian compassionate rights application.
What's the difference between that and refugee?
So refugee, basically, you are fleeing your country since it's not safe for you.
So there has to be some sort of conflict happening in that country?
Yes, there are some specific reasons based on your political views or gender or your religion, anything else similar to that. And then you go through the refugee divisions or appeal. So it's a process. For example, if we take into account humanitarian application, is basically the immigration officer has to look at your application and cry a little bit, right? Because your situation is so different and you don't qualify for any other immigration streams. Right, it works the best for people who are, let's say, inadmissible on health issues, and also works for older people. For example, all families here, right? Like mother, father, children, grandchildren, and this grandmother came. They don't have any more family left over in the country of origin, and this grandmother, she cannot immigrate because immigration is not easy. So could be for her the option for humanitarian compassionate rights application, yes, because there is no sponsorship intakes lottery, right? Basically, so it depends.
So it's like a compassionate program.
You just have to show the officer why you deserve to have this permanent residency. Okay,
so those are the main ways in. Now, what about for students? Because is that like an unreported thing where these students are coming, doing programs, working after, and somehow slipping their way into the country?
So basically with students, so for example, I think last year we had 550,000 application approved.
So I saw a stat. We put it out in the Rockstar Best Buy email. It was 750.
It's active students holding the study permits, I think, on hand now, where only study permits issued were 550 last year. 1,000. So what it means that there are students that got their study permits approved a year, 2 years before, depending on the length of program. So I believe from those 550,000 study permits approved, there were about 82,000 study permits approved for, like, say, secondary or high school, right?
Oh,
yeah.
So not post-secondary.
Yeah. So it's also, we have to account for that, and. Yes, so for some students, with the students, there is lots of drama going on, right? For example, imagine you live in a European country and you paid lots of money to get accepted to the university or college. You get your study permit issued, and then when you completed the program, there were some details. For example, study permit got accepted. She came to Canada, but there were some changes. She had to go to another college, mainly due to the reason that she didn't have a trusted professional who would lead her. So there was a fraudulent acceptance letter issued, right? So she came to Canada. She had to go to another college. And when she was ready to apply for permanent residency, she was issued misrepresentation, meaning that she has lied on her application. And what happened is her representative from back home have submitted fraudulent acceptance letter, and now she's facing deportation.
So there's people back. So I was about to say back home. There's people in all these other countries around the world,
yes,
that have consultants on the other end to get people
who are not legal. Mainly, that's the problem.
They're not certified.
They're not certified because basically in Canadian law, only two types of people can offer Canadian immigration services. It's consultants and lawyers. So there, what we see, like I get these DMs every day. Hey, look, I got invitation to go to the consulate to do an interview. I need to pay $500 and my visa will be approved. I'm like, no, it doesn't work this way. It doesn't work this way. So people giving away all their money, they get excited by what that person told them. And then they just simply give the money rates. I don't know how much it costs. And they want to come to Canada to study. Mainly it's parents. They want better future for their kids. So they want kids to study, get their diploma, graduate, get permanent residency status after they work. And for some students, it's not been pretty, right?
So they're getting scammed.
Yes,
they're paying
a lot.
these
And that's the
people.
problem because as of right now, there is no way to control all those people around, right? Outside of Canada. How are you going to control them? How are you going to penalize them? There were instances where people were paying $150,000 for a job offer.
To get a fake job offer?
Yeah.
To then come, does it work sometimes? I'm sure it does.
It's both sides. So unfortunately, there are instances when employers here in Canada, they're going to charge you that, where by law, if employer wants to bring foreign worker on a closed work permit, you shouldn't get charged a single dollar, because the only reason employer does it because they don't have people like you, like with experience. So they need this person with this experience to work in their business. So sometimes these employers, this is absolutely illegal stuff. But it happens. So they say, here's the fee. I'll do it for you. Here's the fee. So I do the job offer, because job offer for foreign workers, which is called labor market impact assessment, is kind of complicated thing to go through. First, you have to submit application to Employment Social Development Canada to show that there is a shortage of these professionals in Canada, and you gave Canadians and permanent residents the option to apply for this job, but there was nobody who was available to perform these job duties. Therefore, you're asking to bring foreign worker. And sometimes, so it's both sides. So it's the person who applies, they're willing to pay, and the person who is here in Canada who can do it legally.
So there's some big money in this that people are taking advantage of.
Yes.
Okay. How many immigrants came into Canada last year, and where are they all going? What provinces mainly?
Ontario.
Yeah.
So I think if I look at my data, so through the study permits, we get from 550,000 applications that were approved for study permits, 290,000 students came to Ontario. And there were from 436 work permits issued, which is combination of different types of work permits. For example, the one I just mentioned, where the employer brings foreign worker on closed work permit. Then there is this international experience class where citizens of certain European countries as well as United States can come to Canada. Then there is portion of, for example, if the foreign worker comes on a closed work permit, then your spouse can get work permit. So total there was 436,000 applications, work permit, approved, and 180,000 people came to Ontario.
Okay, so sorry, what's the total of all those different people?
Let me see the total. I think it was 400 something. So if we add up, is it 470?
Okay.
Yeah.
What were I swear I saw stats being thrown around about 1 million immigrants. 1 million people came into Canada last year.
So last year was different, and mainly due to the fact that war in Ukraine. So if you look at the statistics, for example, there were about over 1 million applications submitted for this special measure, Canada-Ukraine Emergency Travel Authorization. About 700,000 applications were approved, and about 200,000 people came to Canada from Ukraine. So last year...
That's not included in those numbers you just put?
That they're included. So study permits, we have to remember about some of those students came based on the temporary program, right? So ministerial instructions or special programs where, for example, something like this happened, Turkey, Afghanistan, Ukraine, the minister comes out and issues a special program, we need to help people, and so more people come in, right? But some people left as well. And in those numbers, we just have to see, right? Some people here, they don't work, right? So, but they're still here. They'll need housing and demand.
This is crazy.
Yes.
Just the complexity of it all. But then it's hard to get solid numbers, it seems.
It is hard, yeah. It is hard to get because people come, what I've seen recently is people come to Ontario and some of them, especially based on their jobs, right? So for example, their knock code, their job is not letting them register in these immigration programs. In Ontario, there are high standards, right? So employer has to have, let's say, if you want to go through sponsorship from employer, they have to have $1 million revenue. They have to be in business 3 years. Some programs, depending on the area as well. If you're in GTA, employer needs to have $1 million revenue. If you're outside GTA, 500,000. So it has to be legal businesses, right, to sponsor. So for some people who don't have high level of English, which is level 9 out of 10, and they don't have, like, say, master's or bachelor's degree, and their jobs are not in IT, healthcare, and construction.
Sorry, what are you saying?
IT, into information technology.
Oh, IT, got it. Sorry.
So these are the knock codes and categories that Ontario prioritizes. So it's healthcare, which is great. We need more nurses and doctors, trades, right? So people who can build housing, and like plumbers, electricians, and then there is information technology, software developers, and yes, some people are moving to other provinces. What I have seen, they call me and say, look, I'm not going to be able to increase my English by so much, or learn. Sometimes for some people, you need to learn French to a certain level to be competitive, right, among other people. So what I tell to my clients is always have A and B, right? So program A, so for example, you're aiming to immigrate to this program, but in case something changes, like for example, a couple of weeks ago, as I mentioned, there's going to be some special job codes that are going to be prioritized. What's your plan B? You're going through employer, you're going to different province. So yeah, people are, but mainly what I see why they live in Ontario is it's too expensive.
Okay, so the majority of people are originally coming to...
49%, yes.
49% of these people are coming to Ontario, primarily Southern Ontario, Golden Horseshoe area?
Yes, absolutely, because everyone is excited to be here close to Toronto because of the jobs, right? Transportation, you're not going to be able to find a job if you go some small village up north.
Okay, and it's a mix of a whole lot of students.
Yes.
And other people with work visas.
Yes.
And most of them trying to get permanent residency.
Yes, that's correct.
And then once they get permanent residency, can start applying for family sponsors or family reunification?
Yeah, in order, let's say for...
So it's almost like one person gets the foot in the door and then brings everyone over.
Yes, for example, you need to, if you want to sponsor someone, you need to be permanent resident, file your taxes, get your notice of assessment for the last 3 years, qualify, depending on who you want to sponsor. If you're sponsoring parents, grandparents, your income has to be higher than the low income cutoff numbers that the Immigration of Canada.
And that's because they don't want people to be a burden on the social programs?
Exactly, yes.
And there's also, I think you mentioned it earlier, health requirements, like if somebody aside from the compassionate,
like if somebody is terminally ill, it's impossible to sponsor them through the regular program. There is possibilities. For example, somebody was really sick, but now they're okay. So, and you need a doctor's note, some diagnostics tests to show that there's going to be no burden on the health system, and then there is some calculation taken in account to see how much money this person can potentially use from healthcare. And then based on that, you take in next steps, right? What you have to do? Do you go for humanitarian compassionate grounds application? It depends, case by case.
So overall, they're incentivizing young 20 to 30-year-old
Yes.
professionals, working professionals, now more so trades than these professional jobs. I don't know what the word is. White collar jobs, like IT.
Yes.
What did you say? IT, tech?
IT, then there's architecture, like database, like managers.
Yeah. So that's been the priority.
Yes,
up to this point now.
For the federal level, where each province has very similar requirements. So each province, for example, British Columbia, Alberta, they also have those skill trades and IT. But now the federal immigration is changing, so they want to bring those people that we need in Canada, rather than people who have very high score. But we still have labor shortage, right? So we still don't have nurses and doctors.
Okay, so the federal government is dictating the big targets.
Yes.
And then the provinces and municipalities are left to just deal with whatever comes in or with whatever they're looking for.
They have their quotas. For example, for this year, Ontario has 18 or 19,000 applications or families they can issue nominations, right? In Alberta, it's 9,000 people. So depending again on where you work, what's your NOC code, what do you have to offer to the province? Is your NOC required? Is it popular?
What are you saying? Your NOC?
NOC code. So it's National Occupation Classification Code, or code, National Occupation Code. So it's basically a job title and lead statement, which describes the specific job. And then the main duties. And then there is also requirements. Do you have to have license? What education you don't have to have associated with it? Yeah. Okay.
The three big political parties in Canada, Liberals, NDP, Conservatives, do they all have pretty similar views on immigration in terms of they want to keep up these high levels? Just very briefly.
Yeah, so what I see is Liberals, they are very pro-immigration. Where Conservatives,
like crank it up?
Yes, bring more. Maybe that's how we balance the economy, demand, we create more jobs and more taxpayers' dollars go into the government. Where conservative were much less.
Is it still significant though? Because we're very, very high.
I think it was about 200,000 or 300,000 with conservatives, where now we are 500,000 with Liberal government.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, like the other party you mentioned, when there were elections, there was a political party who said that if we were to be chosen, we're going to bring no more than 100,000 permanent residents.
That was NDP?
I'm not sure. I remember this quote, but maybe it was NDP, but I'm not sure. Could it be?
Yeah. Okay, but everyone overall is pro-immigration, and I guess the theory is that we have a naturally declining birth rate here.
That's correct. Yes, I believe now we are 1 in 5 people we have 1 in 5 people who are 65 or older, so which makes about 7 million or 8 million people who are in their retiring age. And I think in 10 years, when baby boomers who were born in 1965, they will be, they're 65 years old. We're going to have, I think, 12 million people who are 65 years and older. So we need to bring more.
12 out of about 40 million in Canada.
41, yeah.
41 million. Yeah, that's a big chunk.
Yes.
So they're trying to fill it up now.
1 in 4, basically 1 in 4. And yeah, we need hardworking Canadians and temporary residents who can cover the expenses of government by paying taxes.
Okay, this is definitely more coordinated than I thought it was, because it seems like a big disaster. Like federal government just dictates targets, you guys all deal with it. It does seem like there's some coordination between the different levels of government.
Definitely, yeah. For example, usually what we need now is not necessarily what's going to happen now. Usually it happens in a year, right? We needed nurses and trades like 2 years ago, right? So now finally they change in a little bit. At least they're doing some changes, which is great. They're giving options to other people who are really needed in Canada to immigrate on the federal level. But still, there are many other people who also need some, for example, temporary programs or some public policies where they're gonna bring people with, like, say, very low English, or those jobs that are not very popular don't allow you to even be eligible to register for a program. So I think especially for people who've been here a couple years or more, right, you kind of have to help them also be closer to the dream.
Okay, so now how does housing relate to all this? What are these people facing when they come here in terms of the housing market?
Yeah, it's interesting because from 6 units, 4 of them are immigrants, right? The one I'm renting out. So 4 of the families.
So these are your personal properties?
And it's hard because they don't have credit score. It's either they can put more money up front, which I'm not fan of that, but you just have to go with your gut, like internal GPS.
Not fan of not having a credit score?
So they wouldn't have credit score. They just came to Canada on work permit, right?
What are you not a fan of though, sorry?
The credit score, right? I would love to see the credit score, but I want to see your habits in terms of like how you spend your money that comes in, goes out, how much in the minus are you every month, right? So that's makes more sense to me. So yeah, some of my tenants, they don't have credit score. I just had to follow my gut.
Yeah.
And see and they've been okay, they're great, but it's hard for family. So usually what I see happens often. So for example, if a family wants to immigrate or come to Canada on work permit, so usually one person is husband or spouse will go to Canada, start a job, find a housing, right? And then bring over the rest of
I see that all the time, filling rental properties.
Yes.
Yeah, if someone's there, they want to bring the wife over, the husband over.
Yes, because it's like if you have 2 kids, you cannot really find the room, right, for the first couple months, and then I'm not sure if it's enough time to build a credit history for a couple months, probably not. But then I was just talking to a lady yesterday who came to Canada last year. So she said in summertime, they were looking at apartments like half of the house, like first floor, they were $3,000 a month. And in 6 months, she had to pay $3,700. So $700 more per month. So there was a huge jump, mainly due to, in certain areas, again, this is Mississauga, Etobicoke, where all the Ukrainians go, right? So those areas got really big increases on rents.
Okay, and Ukrainians are going there because there's already a big community?
Yes.
So they want to kind of...
Yeah, stay together.
Because
it's easier, you can find a dentist who speaks Ukrainian, right? If you have zero English or you find a teacher, Ukrainian classes for the kids, right? So people go into communities where they can feel more comfortable in a new country.
For sure. So the foreign students typically aren't working when they're in school. It's just afterwards. And then all these other immigrants, do they already have jobs lined up for the most part when they come here, or do they need to come here and then find jobs? I know refugees, humanitarian probably don't have jobs lined up, but
it depends. Yeah. So for example, students, depending, so there are designated learning institutions. So basically government approved colleges, universities, where if you get accepted to that university college, you can work 20 hours outside campus or 40 hours on campus. If this is the private college, usually they 2 or 3 times cheaper, and that could be how some people get into Canada because it's much, much cheaper for them.
Private colleges?
Yes.
Are cheaper?
Yeah. So they're 1 year certificate, right, or 2 year. But then this college does not, if it's not on the list of designated learning institution, it will not give you an option to apply for work permit after you complete your studies. So it's, what do you choose? Do you just choose to come to Canada for the most affordable program and then go from there? And usually that's where the trouble starts. But can you afford the college that's going to give you an option to work and then apply for postgraduate work permit?
So those designated schools, those are all the government run?
Yeah, approved by government, meaning that if the school has a DLI number, it means you're good. It was your future, right? So yeah, there is quite a few colleges that you just go DLI, you just Google DLI list, Canada, see.
So the government schools can charge 3 times the amount of tuition, but the private schools aren't allowed to.
They're less much. So that's why the price comes with the options you will have. So it's all connected.
Interesting. Okay. So they're paying. So now it seems like there's an obvious incentive for these semi-state-run post-secondary schools, universities and colleges, to go for foreign students because they're getting 3 times the amount of tuition.
Of course.
Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. And Canada, as we have seen by the numbers, 550,000 applications were approved. Probably 800,000 were submitted, right? Usually we have, but there were lots of Ukrainians, right, who came and got approved. So usually there is about 40% refusal rate on all so let's say 1 million people applied, right? to come to Canada on study permits.
Just on study permits?
Yes.
And that's not the economic?
No, absolutely. And if to talk about the work permit, so again, it depends. So if you, for example, come from France or Germany on 1 year work permit, there is a working holiday program where you don't need to have a job offer from Canadian employer, but then there is an international experience class program where you have to have a job offer from employer. So you come in and you already know where you work, or if it's working holiday, you just come and you look for employment.
Okay. Now, with all these people coming here, a lot to Ontario, to this one specific region, do you see any issues arising from that?
Yes.
In terms of having the infrastructure, specifically
yes, that's
housing?
The one, and the housing infrastructure, and then affordability.
Is this being addressed in any way that you see?
I don't see any help from government in that.
No?
No.
In terms of creating housing, for sure not.
No,
but about hospitals and roads?
Exactly. So like the roads I was driving.
Traffic is crazy.
Traffic is crazy. There was like lots of oversized vehicles. I probably seen 2 or 3 construction stops. I was waiting on the stop signal, so I'm sorry for being late.
Yeah, no, I get it.
And yes, a good thing that makes me happy is at least the taxpayers' dollars are used somewhere. Like, because I come from a different country, I'm just comparing the roads here and there. It's nightmare back home, right? So you just, your vehicle is really struggling on those roads and holes. So, so I'm not sure, like probably we're going to see much more housing built. Like, for example, in the area where I live, there are going to be 10,000 people more, like it's a small community, in the next 10 years. There's a huge land where going to be housing built.
So just further densification,
Yes, and
this doesn't look like it's slowing down. And I know you said the Conservatives seem to be the lowest of the big 3, but it's still like not insignificant, like 250,000 people recorded.
I think 480. Was work permits and study permits in Ontario 480,000.
Well, it's just you mentioned the Conservatives, right? They had the lower targets.
Their targets quota for the year, yes.
Yeah, like even if they come into power next, it's still pretty high.
It is a lot. So,
which I get it. Like the baby boomer, like that all kind of makes sense. It's just it looks like we're in a decade of craziness. Is all I'm thinking.
It's just like people come to Canada, and mostly like, for example, people who want to come to Canada, they are like hardworking people. They know they want to build families, so they come into Canada and they already have that hard work mode. So they know I have to work so many years, and then I can hopefully retire. That's another probably podcast how people can retire, but. Usually people move out, right? They move away. So interestingly, that in Atlantic provinces, there are more people age 65 and older than, for example, in prairie provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. There is more younger generation people who are 0 to 15 years old. So does it mean that 65 years and older people moving away from those provinces because it's too cold, or maybe because it's more affordable in those provinces to raise a family? There are more kids. So
in the western provinces?
Yes, yeah. Not British Columbia, but it's Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. There are more kids per family, and there is less people who are 65 and older.
I'm sure affordability has something to do with it.
Yes.
Okay, so renting to new immigrants, often they don't have a credit score, but so I guess you're just going off of
for example,
pay stubs, employment.
Yeah, pay stubs, and sometimes you just have to. Some people still looking for work, but they have another person, so it's 2 families moving in right now.
Yeah, very common.
For example, that person I just mentioned recently who rented a house for $3,700, she has 3 people, like 3 families. So it's her and her husband, her mother and father, and then there is a brother. So there are 3 basically incomes. Maybe there are 6 or 7 incomes, but they're combined and they're paying down this rental, right? And the other properties, like the units I have, it's 2 families. It's like husband and wife, and then there is like the brother or sister.
Yeah, and this is common in every, I feel like, nationality when there's these big immigration surges from different countries at different times.
Yeah.
Like the past 80, 100 years in Canada have done the same thing, like multi-generational living. Like that's how the Italians were in the 50s.
Yes.
After the war. Like that's what my dad did.
Stay together. Yes.
So I think it's just something that real estate investors need to be aware of and plan for and expect when renting out their properties, to see these alternative living arrangements. Like they might have in mind, I want this nice professional couple, or this tiny little family, like this one small compact family unit. But in reality, you might be getting a ton of people where they're friends. I see this one a lot, where it's like a husband and wife with like a couple cousins of theirs or their friends.
Yeah, because it's affordable for them, right? And then it makes sense. For me, it's better if you tell me the truth who's going to be living at the property, rather than it's only you, but then I see all these cars parked on the driveway, right? Just be honest with me and it's fine, right? Rather than just making up stuff to...
Which does happen. And then, that's where the gut feel does come into play big time. I've rented a bunch of properties specifically to Indian immigrants who come, and they've been like some of the best tenants, like so polite, very religious. I mean, this is all anecdotal from like a few cases, but like they've just been awesome. But they did have credit scores and stuff. They were students, so I guess they had time to build up their credit.
Yes.
But it's something I see a lot. In terms of nationalities, are you working with people of all different countries? Are you primarily focused with Ukrainians?
Now I have like my client base is about 80% Ukrainians, but I work with everyone who I can communicate to, let's say.
Yeah, anyone you can speak English to?
Yes, anyone. Unless my English is not where, because I speak so much, probably 80% of the day I speak Ukrainian, so...
Okay.
But I love my accent.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. Are Ukrainians gravitating towards you because you are Ukrainian? You can speak to them?
Yes, mainly because there's so much information to explain. And for people who have planned their immigration and they know some information, it's easier for them to absorb this information. But for people who just came and they want to know how to stay, there is lots of steps which you need to take only to be eligible to register in the immigration programs. I'm not talking about the rest, like going through the medical, admissibility, inadmissibility, criminal checks, right? So I think because they can speak in their native language, because there's so much and there is a website, there's a great website for people like Canada, cic.gc.ca, which has lots of immigration information programs. But the problem with it is the immigration website is not the law. So there is lots of information that you can get lost. So you click on this link, click on this link, and then you come to the point that like, I'm not sure what I'm doing. And there were actually a couple federal court cases where the applicants were applying through the instructions published on the RCC Immigration Canada website. And then the judge came back, said the website is not the law. You have to go with the Immigration Act of Canada and regulations. So that could be the problem. And that's why, there is. And then based on the experiences, right, you see what could be the problem. And you kind of guide the client, say, hey, you need to do this in advance. It takes so much time. You don't want to be out of time. Because some programs, for example, if you get invited, you have 14 days to submit all paperwork. Some programs let you submit in 60 days. So just be prepared.
Okay. What rights do you have as a permanent resident in Canada?
I haven't been permanent resident for a long time for myself. I'm just comparing. So you basically have all the rights. Besides, you cannot vote. And then you also have an obligation, residency obligation. So you have to stay physically in Canada 2 years out of 5, basically 730 days in 5 years. So for example, if you have permanent residency card, the status, so you come to Canada and you meet the officer, the border CBSA officer, so he looks 5 years back and sees if you have met that residency obligation by being physically in Canada 730 days.
That sounds like a temporary resident, not a permanent resident.
There are cases when people come and go, because usually some family, you have to take care about older people. There is possibilities for those cases to ask for reconsideration, like compassionate, not take away the permanent residency from that person. You still have to present the evidence why you have left Canada and to show that you really intend to stay and work, live in Canada. Otherwise, your permanent residency will be taken away.
Do you need to be working?
No.
In order to uphold it?
No, you don't need to be working.
So you basically just don't get the right to vote, and you have those restrictions on time in the country. Yeah,
there is still, for example, when it comes to temporary residence, like if you're on study permit, work permit, in compared to permanent residency, if you get caught driving under influence, the consequences are harder for temporary residents than if you have permanent residency. But I always tell my clients, don't drink and drive. Don't drink and drive, because you're going to have criminal offense, and then it may not let you go take next steps in your immigration.
Okay, and then the step after permanent resident. So that's when you get the ID card.
Yes.
And that's an official Canadian ID.
Yes.
Like you can use that to verify identity.
Yeah, like if you buy property, like if you probably take a loan out. Yes, I haven't seen any fake ones.
Okay, so banking, social programs, driving. Do you need a drive? You obviously need a driver's license still.
Some people don't.
Yeah, so everything except the right to vote, essentially. In
That's correct. Yes, and then the residency, and then you can apply for Canadian citizen. So basically, in the last 4 years, you have to be minimum 2 years as. You basically have to be in Canada physically 1,095 days, so 3 full years. So you can be 2 years as a permanent resident and then 2 years as the work permit or like say study permit. But those 2 years, they combined into one. So basically 2 days count for one when you're temporary resident. So being in Canada 2 years on the work permit and 2 years as PR, a permanent resident, you can apply for Canadian citizenship.
Okay, cool. And you have to pass a test, right?
Yes, English test, level 4, speaking and listening. And you have to show that you file taxes. You receive notice of assessments for
That's good.
Yeah, those 3 years, which is great.
Don't you have to know a bit of Canadian history?
Yes, then you have the test. Like if you pass certain steps, eligibility steps, meaning you have everything you need to have in place in order to qualify and be considered to apply to get citizenship, then you pass history, right? So you write a test, you study by the booklet, the Canadian history. It's done on Zoom. And then your ceremony is on Zoom too.
Okay.
Some ceremonies are in person, but more and more often citizenship ceremonies are over Zoom.
So when people are coming here, are they expecting some sort of version of the American dream? You know, the Canadian dream?
Yes.
Just the opportunities?
Yes.
And do their expectations match up with the reality from your experience when they do get here? Do you ever get people like, where the heck did you bring me?
Exactly. Well, I don't ask anyone to come. I'm just, fulfilling your desire to get. So yes, it happens, and it depends on the lifestyle you had prior to coming to Canada. So especially some European countries, let's say Italy or Spain, if you lived somewhere somewhere on the lakeshore, right? Meaning that you after work you go on the beach, and then here in Canada you come. The winters are much colder, and you have to work. So then people, I have actually one of my tenants said, this is not for me. I came here because of the war, but this country is not for me.
Where did he come from?
From Ukraine.
And he's
yes.
And he'd rather go back to the war?
Not back.
Just somewhere else.
But just he said, I don't see myself working like this for 10, 15 years until retirement. And here he cannot do what he did back home. So it's more like connections, experiences, what you can do in terms of business. Because here it's like market is different, right? Supply and demand. So some people saying, I'm going to stay here temporary, but then I'm going to be making my next step. Some people love it because they have predictability, stability. They know what's going to be tomorrow. And mainly that's due to the fact that, for example, in some countries, you can work, but you're not certain if you're going to get your paycheck because your boss can say, hey, listen, this month I don't have money to pay you, or your job is on and off. So some people who really plan it, they want to come to Canada because they can provide a housing and food to their family and children. But then again, one person is no longer enough to cover all the expenses here in Canada. You need 2 incomes, you need a spouse and husband and wife, because with one income, just almost impossible to cover all those expenses.
So are people a bit shocked by the cost of living when they get here?
Yes, especially housing. Yeah, they're shocked because it's just way too much. They were not expecting to pay so much into the housing. So that could be, and then some people get very emotional, saying that I will never be able to afford to buy a house here. I'm here with my spouse works part-time, my job is enough to pay rent and some food, right? And some after curriculum activities for kids. When I'm going to be able to buy the house and when I'm going to be able to pay it down, I'm going to be already 85 or 90 years old, right? Yeah. So if people come in their 30s or 40s.
Were these people primarily homeowners back where they came from?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So that's common to be a homeowner in these?
It's very common because there is usually you get...
Are you speaking mainly European countries?
Yes, or? Yes. So you get housing, like some countries, right, through the inheritance from the family, and it's common back home also in those countries for like mother, father, and their kids to live together, right? So they have, and it's different mentality, right? Where here in Canada, you have to come and go, right? Work. Where back home is like not necessarily, right?
Well, what about people from, like, there's a lot of Indian immigrants, for example. Are they experiencing similar things? It's a totally different country than Europe.
Mentality, they know where they're going, because here is again like stability. You're gonna finish school. Like if we take students into account, they're gonna get their diploma, they're gonna work, immigrate, and it's more for like older generations, like people in their 30s, 40s, what they're gonna give their children. So lots of adults who come here on economical like immigration programs, they work hard and they do it for their children, for their future generations, so they can give them better life, so they can feel much better, be protected, right, in Canada than in their back home countries.
Okay. So should real estate investors expect these, I keep saying crazy, it's a
crazy.
Lot.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mean that in a negative way.
I wouldn't be able to afford to buy a house right now. I'd look at the prices and say no, right?
Yeah. It's just chaotic. Maybe that's a better word than crazy. These high levels of immigration, they seem high because when you compare them like per capita to the US, it's
especially for like tiny Canada in terms of population, right? Like,
exactly. Just per capita, like it's incredible levels of immigration. Is this to be expected?
Yes, I think next 10 years, for sure.
And we don't have enough housing now.
No, so we're gonna build smaller units on top of each other, right? Outside, like in areas, and maybe like the rural northern immigration pilots programs, they're gonna be building there some units. And again, you need jobs there, so it's all interconnected, right? You need to invite people to give them job, not only in the housing. But for sure here in this area in GTA, it's going to be, let's say, maybe if I look at the prices right now, for example, if I want to buy a house, like single detached, and do 2-unit conversion, it might not be enough to cover my expenses, but what I'll do 3-unit or 4-unit, and that will work for me. So probably going to see.
Yeah, I know in St. Catharines, maybe Hamilton, I forget now. Definitely St. Catharines, they just got approved the ability to go, instead of just 1 unit to 2 units, with the secondary now 3 units.
Yes. So we'll see more and more of that. It's going to be smaller, but it's going to be more affordable, right, for people who need that affordable housing. And it's fine.
And the onus is on the private market, private investors to make these units.
Yes, because basically I can probably do the unit in, let's say, 6 months, right? From the time of buying and converting it, 6-9 months. Like I do it slowly, right? I don't hire a contractor. We do hire our own trades.
Okay, so this is a strategy you've been using?
Yes.
Which I do want to get into is your personal journey with real estate investing.
Yes.
Because it's almost like you're an insider to all this. You're like, I see the tsunami coming, I'm going to start building.
Yes, I'm actually, that's how we started. I joined, I came for the first introduction class in different office. I didn't sign up the same day to be the member. Then I came for your event somewhere in Mississauga, and then I was wowed. Like I really liked the community, the people. I signed up to be a member, and you basically guys guided me how it should be done properly. And we bought on the first property in 2019, 20. So the closing was January 2020. So just during the COVID, before the COVID started. But it's great. It took us a year to finish first property, convert into the duplex.
Do you guys have a construction background? Your husband? Or?
I was studying being an architect. My husband actually,
cool.
He works in construction field.
Okay.
Yes.
So between your architect experience and then his construction, you guys managed
I never had a chance to use my architect experience, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Here in Canada, yes. I did hire a company to do the drawings for me, Andy, but we did everything from the start, right, by ourselves. So we wanted to go through the process. We had an option to hire a general contractor, and everything would be done, here's the keys, welcome. But we decided to do everything on our own. And I'm very fortunate that we took that route, even though it took us about a year to complete with COVID. Like we couldn't get material in. Home Depot was closed. You had to order online, come pick up, curbside pickup. And we were not structured properly, so I wouldn't book ahead my trades, or we were looking at trades. Some trades wouldn't come. Then we say, okay, we cannot work with you anymore, right?
So why were you happy that you went through that experience?
We learned so much. We learned so much from basically just the house was just the box, foundation and the walls, because we changed all electrical, all that was like 60-year-old, the bungalow. We changed all the drains. We did backflow valve, whatever, just to make sure. We learned so much about the fire separation, about the units, the ceiling height, the windows, and I was renting them out by myself also. Like what you're doing, right? So
yeah.
I wanted to go through myself just so I gained the knowledge. So then I will be more knowledgeable in terms of like my next project I'll be doing.
So did you already own a house for the two of you guys?
Yeah, actually, it's a funny story. I became landlord by mistake, by accident. So we had a house in GTA in Georgetown. It's a small like 3-bedroom house. Then my second child was born, and my mother came to live with us. We were looking for a bigger house, like 4 or 5 bedroom in the same area. So it was 2017. So we bought the bigger house, just like a couple kilometers down the road. But we couldn't sell our primary residence because it was 2017 when the foreign public policy for the foreign investors came into play, where they had to pay extra taxes if they're foreign investors. And then, like, my neighbor sold his house like May 20th, and I couldn't sell it in a week. Like, I couldn't sell it, and the price I was offered was too low, and said, no, I'm not selling for this price. So the stubbornness probably helped. So we moved into the bigger house so the all family members can feel comfortable, and we had to rent out the primary residence. And then after a year or so, like, I'm like, you know what? Look, I paid down $10,000 or $15,000 of my mortgage principal, and I'm like, I have to look into more details. I want to get more information. Then when I Googled real estate investing, that's how I found you guys.
That's how you found Roxanne.
Yes. Yes.
That's cool. So you've been working with Paul.
Yes.
And you've continued to build your portfolio. So so is that how I think you mentioned 6 units?
Yes.
So you've been buying single families, converting them?
Yes, that's correct. That's so we finished the second one. It's actually good timing. We bought 2019 pre-construction townhouse and unit, and we converted it into the 2 units with the smaller bachelor basement apartment downstairs.
Oh, okay. This was an end unit townhome.
Yes. Higher requirements in terms of the ceiling height and like 10% light, but like I paid great price comparing to what's now, 2019, and I only had to put $36,000 from my unsecured line of credit, so it worked.
For the whole conversion?
To give the builder, right, as a deposit.
Oh, wow.
And then it got closed in 2.5 years.
Oh, man. Yeah, that sounds pretty sweet.
So the timing was great. And then, we have another property which we're going to sell and then again use, because it's another pre-construction like condo, another condo townhouse in Hamilton. And
that you also converted?
No, I cannot convert it.
Okay, it's not common to be converting townhomes, right?
I think we are the first townhouse in the area there who has separate entrance.
I have my first property, which was a rent town and they never bought out, is an end unit townhome.
Oh, this is great.
And so I've thought about it, but I'm like, it's a pretty small basement. There's not much clearance.
It's just it's enough for one person, basically. I think it's like 300 or 400 square feet unit. But it's still affordable.
Yeah, and it's an extra source of income.
And it's brand new and small. We did nice foam insulation there, so it feels cozy and dry.
So why do you like this strategy so much, adding the second suites? Obviously, you know the importance with all the immigration coming in to provide those units.
Yeah, so for example, if I do rent out the house to one family, I'm going to be far away from covering my expenses on monthly basis, and I'll not be able to stay in this provide affordable housing if I'm not covering my expenses. It just cannot come up every month with like $1,000 extra. Right?
Yeah, you can only have so many negative cash flowing houses.
So the second unit helps, works great to cover expenses, so I can keep providing affordable house units for people who need it, and it works for me. So it's both ways. They like their nicely renovated, clean space at affordable price, comparing to, for example, the single property where just one family can be living, right? And it works for me.
I really can't wait personally myself to get to the stage where I have enough capital to start doing these renovations and conversions on my own properties, because up to this point, I've only had enough money to like scrape together for a down payment on this one, scrape together for a down payment, and just accumulating.
It gets harder now with every property.
Yeah, just buying the assets has been the important thing to me.
Yes.
But I know like just how you can recycle your money and the velocity of money, and buy one, do the conversion, pull it out, recycle that.
And mainly like the next property we want to do is like sell this townhouse and buy and do the somewhere in Hamilton 3-unit, maybe 4-unit place. Maybe in 10, 15 years, I'm going to have to give 1 unit to my children, say, get out from the house.
Yeah,
go live in this property, so give me peace of mind. Maybe it's going to be this way, but at least I'm going to have this option, right? And then long term, yes, in 15, 20 years, idea that I don't have to work, right? And every hour to provide salary like $1 to buy food and pay mortgage on my primary residence. It's great, but we're still gonna work in Canada. But I want to have an option. I want to have an option and say, you know what? This month, I don't really have to push so hard and work. I can do like part-time, right? I want to have this choice of mine rather than depend on the pension, which is terrible.
Yeah, which isn't much, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel the same way. Like I don't have clearly defined goals of like what I want these properties to provide for me. I just know I'd rather have them than not have them.
Absolutely.
Because I know it will provide a financial fortress, foundation, options.
When you need it, if you need it.
Yeah. And it's like in 10 years, maybe I want to optimize for cash flow and work a little bit less. Maybe I want to keep accumulating my net worth, or use these to buy vacation property somewhere and focus on lifestyle.
You can choose what you want, or like you refinance, you do private mortgages, right? So you have options rather than if you don't have a property, what are the options? None.
Yeah, it seems pretty desolate, to be honest, without...
Yeah, so whoever I talk to, I'm like, you have to buy property, so like, or what I see now is more often people buying properties with already legal units, and they rent them out. So, it helps us $2,000 a month and help us to pay our mortgage.
Are these immigrants you're speaking to refer?
Mainly, yes.
Mainly, yeah.
People who are okay having an idea that somebody downstairs or upstairs is going to be living there, right? Because they get used to live in a smaller places, maybe share a room with other tenants in a house, so they're open to this idea more.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about student rentals with all these students coming? Like, I'm seeing...
There's lots of illegal activities in terms of housing, right? Like the rooms in the basement without the proper fire escape is there. There is no fire alarms, right? Carbon monoxide alarms, like some rooms you see. It's funny you mentioned, because my husband, since he works in construction, so one house, it's like new built houses he inspects. So he said, I came into the room, like the master bedroom, there was a huge, like pretty big, maybe half of this room, walk-in closet, and there were mattress in a closet.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah.
I talked to a fire inspector once who was looking to rent a property in Hamilton, and she did a bunch of work in Brampton. She's like, I can't go to Brampton anymore because these horrible fires happen. And it's like there's 16 mattresses on the ground.
This is terrible.
And it's just this terrible product, the symptoms of, I don't know, not enough housing being able to be built?
Affordability, because in order to buy a house, you need proper capital to put down, to build, go by inspector, do the permits. It probably costs you double.
It's insane. Like there's so many negative consequences.
People don't want to put in like this bachelor studio I did. It's probably costing maybe between 50 or 60,000, which is not much at all. Could I just drywall it, do like a washroom with the shower and sink and just put mattresses there? Yeah, I could. But is this what I choose? No, I want to sleep well.
Yeah, no, you don't want to slumlord at all.
Yes.
Yeah, the peace of mind.
Plus, those mattresses, spaces, they probably rent them for like $200-300 a month.
Yeah.
Affordability again. And for students, when it comes to students, it's hard for students because they come into a new country. They need to study because sometimes the study load is a lot, your assignments, and then they need also to work so it's always good to have a good pillow in terms of who is supporting your studies. So whenever the student comes to Canada, international students, there has to be somebody who can support him in case the student cannot work this season. He needs to put his attention towards studying and passing assignments. so he can pay for his accommodation, food, transportation, or books. And sometimes, quite often, the students stop studying and they go to work because they like to feel the money, the paycheck, the bigger paycheck, and that's when the problem comes, right? So
because they've left the path of the school?
You cannot. So being a full-time student, the most common mistake that students always often do is, for example, they finish their studies, they had their final exams, but their work permit or study permit still is good for another 5-6 months. So they continue working, but you cannot work when you finish studies because that's the part of your program, part of the immigration right you have. So you are a full-time student, you can work. But once you're no longer a full-time student, even if the paper says that your study permit is valid, you cannot work. You have to apply for postgraduate work permit. And then,
will that just automatically be approved?
No. No. There are some, you have to be full-time students having specific amount of credits, subjects per semester. So sometimes, for example, what happens is student, it's some kind of season, like winter season, summer season, depends on if they study in summer, they go to work and they take less subjects. So then during that semester, in the middle of the studies, you're not full-time student, you're part-time student. So then the trouble comes. Usually you are allowed to be a part-time student in the last semester of your studies, but not in between. Or kids get depressed, right? They say, I cannot do it anymore. They stop studying, or they just go to work. Then they just then the trouble starts for them to get their work permit. It's a refusal after refusal, and then what they do next.
Damn. Life is hard, eh?
Yes.
Holy smokes. Okay. I've covered a lot of stuff here that I think I wanted to. So your business, do you want to just call out what you do, you consult people? How does it work?
Yeah, basically, so I do, as of today, right now, I do only immigration in Ontario. I just simply cannot cover all the provinces. It's way too much. So I do help people to immigrate in Ontario. I help with study permits, work permits, if it's like open work permit or closed work permit with employer, where, for example, employer wants to hire a foreign worker. I help with that. I represent people. I hold their hand. So there is one type of clients where I hold their hand through the whole process. And there is another type of businesses sometimes also, or clients who needs review service. So for example, I have quite a few businesses who need to hire foreign worker. They're doing this LMA application and they're like, what's going on, right? And can you help me? Yes, I review their application. We sit with them. So it's much more affordable for them. It depends, right, on the client.
Okay. How can people find out more about you?
They can call me or email me. So my cell is 416-877-1871.
Oh, you're putting it out there.
Yeah, or they can email me. It's a long one, but it's info@welcometocanaDaimmigration.com.
Okay. And is that your website as well?
I don't, to be honest, it is my website, yes, but I haven't been there for a long time.
Updating it? It's a nice site. I was looking at it when I was trying to research for this.
Oh goodness, probably since the war started in Ukraine,
So it did sounds terrible, actually. Yes, I was about to say, did business explode for you? But did, obviously you saw a big pickup. Yeah,
absolutely. So the first 6-9 months, there was lots of volunteering hours where you help people, just, explain them, especially people who are in Europe, mothers with children, you do for them for pro bono, you don't charge them. So that was the first 6-9 months. And then people already came to Canada. When they already want to immigrate, then I already give that professional advice. We sit down, we look at your age, your education, your experience, and where you want to be.
Is Canada a top destination right now for people fleeing Ukraine?
Yes. I'm not sure. See, for the Europe, what I see is more people stay there temporary. Where in Canada, people who decided to stay, they how do I get my permanent residency? I need to get my permanent residency. My permit expires in 2 years. What am I going to do next? Yes. So
I guess if you came this far too across the Atlantic, it's
hard to leave, right?
It's a much bigger commitment.
I haven't gone once to Ukraine since 2009. I just don't have time. It's terrible, but just have to find a couple of weeks of my time.
No. Yeah, just busy working, right?
Yeah, with family and
raising a family, buying rental properties, starting an immigration consulting business.
All adds up, and sometimes, you just want to escape, but you have to keep going.
Yeah, that's life in Canada, man. That's life. I know it's way worse in like other parts of the world.
So people are like, they're happy that they have that ability to come to Canada and know what's going to be tomorrow. They're going to find a job and have a paycheck to cover the expenses. That's what really drives them to Canada, this stability.
Yeah, like Canada is great in so many ways. And then in so many other ways, you can just see how you could make things better or what the obvious problems are. And so it's a bit frustrating, I think.
Yes, but we can just talk about it for us, right? And bring awareness. But government needs to take actions.
Yeah, totally. Okay, is there anything else on immigration that you wanted to cover? I saw a couple things here, maybe artificial intelligence.
Yeah, so we have Chinook artificial intelligence. So it comes to the refusals. So for example, if you applied for any, like usually it's work permit, study permit, visitor visas, if you got your refusal pretty fast, just take extra step and request the notes from immigration. Why? Because what we have seen recently is Chinook, the artificial intelligence, even though immigration says that it's not decision-making tool, but rather it's a tool that summarizes and organizes information for an officer. What we see is in the notes, when we request the notes, to see detailed refusal, what's the reason of the refusal. So we see that there was no present, no actually officer notes. Like you have to make a connection for your logical connection for your refusal. You cannot just write, no, I don't like you, you're not going to leave Canada by the end of your term and I just given you refusal. There has to be a connection. So just don't give up and request the note, see if there is a legal, there is a connection, reasoning for the refusal. If there is not, you can go to federal court, but always better to avoid those places, and always look for a second opinion. So it's like we have in healthcare or any other probably industry, try to speak to one person, like if we talk about immigration or any other industry, and seek second opinion from another person, because sometimes unfortunately people who want to get their residency, permanent residency, they trust too much. When, for example, professionals, immigration professionals, they give some guarantees, which is absolutely prohibited in law. So no one can give any guarantees. So if somebody tells you, I guarantee you're going to be approved, so please note this is scam, you are not allowed. So I can lose my license if I'm going to guarantee that you're going to be okay. Go for second opinion, because sometimes people choose the wrong path, and then it takes on the years. Federal court refusals, appeals, and you lose lots of time and money because you just trusted maybe too much somebody promising you the outcome.
Okay, so yeah, use a licensed immigration consultant.
They're not a very good licensed one, but
use Daria.
Yeah, sure.
Sounds like she knows what she's talking about.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Anthony. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, really appreciate it, Daria.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.